Welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast, where we sit down and have real conversations with business leaders that have been where you are. During these interviews, we'll dive into what it takes to improve systems and champion processes that maximize performance. Each week, our trailblazing guests share their experiences and understanding of the workforce to help inspire change, challenge our thinking, and share what it takes to successfully travel the road to profitability. Now here's our host, co-founder and chief evangelist of About Time and WorkMax, Mike Merrill.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are excited to have a special guest on with us, Mr. Ken Simonson. Ken is the chief economist at the Associated General Contractors of America, a large organization that we're proudly in support of and we love participating with. So with Ken today, we're going to be exploring the current state of the economy and also the current events that are impacting our industry, as well as what we can expect or what Ken thinks we might see in this upcoming year of 2023. So Ken, welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. And can you give us a little bit about your background as you start?
Sure. Glad to be with you. Many of your listeners probably know AGC is the leading national construction trade association. We have a total of over 27,000 member companies, and it includes not just 6,500 general contractors, but about 10,000 specialty contracting firms and even more suppliers of equipment, goods, and services. They belong through a network of 89 local and state chapters and collectively do every kind of construction other than single-family home building.
Wow, that's a large organization, and again, we're so excited to be involved with the AGC. We love sponsoring, going to the local events, all the safety conferences and different things they do. But now that we've gotten that introduction part behind us, let's just talk about some of the moving parts that you're seeing in the economy right now, and also what you think's coming down the pike.
Sure. Well, I've been with AGC for 21 years now, and I must say these are the most interesting times, and that's not something necessarily to be proud of, but it does show what big changes have been hitting construction ever since the pandemic hit in February of 2020. We had this huge decline in economic activity that fortunately just lasted 2 months, and then construction bounced back better than many other industries as stop work projects were ended and homeowners or people who realized they needed to buy a home, they rushed out to buy one or add to remodel the one that they were in. And indeed, residential construction kept going right up until this fall. We've seen some really steep downturn in expected home building activity, but it hadn't hit in terms of employment. On the other side, you had non-residential construction took a pause for about a year, but for the last year or so, since about August of 2021, it's been growing. Looking forward to 2023, I think we're going to see big changes again.
Yeah. So in your mind, what's the optimistic side of finishing up 2022, heading into 2023? We know the challenges. I mean, you just outlaid a bunch of those. What in your opinion, is there to be excited about when you're in construction?
There are three segments that I think are really starting to take off or on the verge of takeoff. We're seeing huge number of manufacturing projects launched this year and even more coming forth in 2023. So just in the last few months, manufacturing construction has overtaken warehouse, maybe even data centers, as the fastest growing category. But what I think will be new in 2023 is that money that the feds are passing out through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. President Biden signed that way back in November of 2021, but it's taking a long time to get the money awarded or passed through to different state and local agencies to write the regulations dealing with the so-called Build America, Buy America Act, with other requirements involving labor and so forth. So contractors haven't yet seen the benefit in terms of project awards, but I think that's going to hit many categories of infrastructure in 2023 and keep going for years, not the stop-start pattern that we've seen in the past. And then third, power and energy construction. looks like a very strong growth market, even though up till now it's actually lagged.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And we know, just generally speaking, as you mentioned, at least at our organization, when we're out traveling the country and at different events, I was just in Dallas recently, a few weeks back, and five of the five construction companies that I spoke with said that they are expecting 2023 to be a record year for volume and growth for their organization. So that was very exciting and encouraging for me to hear. And it sounds like it's right in line with what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, but as an economist, you wouldn't believe me if I said everything is looking great, particularly when most of my brethren are saying, no, the U.S. is either in recession or it's heading into recession. Now, I'll plead guilty to being an eternal optimist, and I think we will skirt recession. I do expect a slowdown, but the fact is we're still seeing significant job growth, better than we had most of the decade after the 2007 to 2009 slump. And a lot of corporate spending and huge amounts of government investment and good government budget situation at all levels of government. But on the negative side, these ever higher interest rates, they are certainly choking off some kinds of construction. I mentioned home building already looks like it's headed for a deep dive, but really any developer finance category where the developer has to pay attention to their financing costs as well as their construction costs, and then be able to make up any increase in terms of higher rents, it's a tough situation. Those costs are going up, and yet as the economy slows, perhaps goes into recession, renters, lessors, hotel room occupants, they're all going to be more resistant or cautious. So on the watch list, I would put multifamily construction, office, retail, warehouse, and hotel construction.
Yeah. So do you, obviously the interest rates, I mean, that's a huge topic right now. It affects all of us. And surely, as you outlaid, it impacts probably the residential side quite a bit more than maybe on the commercial or industrial, the larger projects, infrastructure, et cetera. What recommendations or things would you advise those that are more focused on residential today to do to maybe adjust to these changing times and what we're in for coming up?
Well, I certainly think that anybody who's building single-family homes, they need to be a lot more cautious about starting projects. I know that a year ago, things were being sold well before construction started. You couldn't even get the materials to do the construction, and labor availability was also a big problem. Well, labor is still certainly an issue for every type of construction firm. There's a series I look at every month from the government called the Job Openings or Labor Turnover Survey, or JOLTS, my favorite acronym for government data. And it consistently is showing that job openings at the end of any given month are a record for that month. And this data goes back to the end of 2000. And in fact, in many months, the openings have exceeded the number of people hired during the entire month. In other words, the industry wanted to bring on twice as many people as it was able to. So even though home building looks like it's about to hit the brakes hard, right now, labor availability is still a problem. Materials have gotten a lot better on the single family side, but people don't like to try to grab a falling knife, as they say. So people are holding off on buying stuff that's going down in price now because they think it may go down lower. So I guess my advice to anybody who's doing residential work is be very cautious about starting a new project, and also about the pricing on the materials that you're looking for. But I think the slowdown in residential will pay some dividends for non-residential contractors. It may free up some materials, some workers.
Yeah, that's a great point. So obviously one of the other things that we know was a real challenge the last couple of years has been the supply chain. Do you think those issues have stabilized quite a bit? And how do you feel about them in the near future?
I'm hearing mixed reports that things like steel are suddenly getting much more available. I already mentioned lumber. Some lumber prices have come almost back down to where they were before the pandemic, in fact. However, cement is a rapidly growing problem. saw a report that the Portland Cement Association said that 43 states are now experiencing shortages of cement. So that means if you're putting up a building or laying mileage pavement for a new highway, you may have to stretch that out because you're only going to get a fraction of what you had last year. And if you're new to that market, you may not find a supplier at all. So that's a big issue. Electrical gear, particularly transformers now, very hard to get in many markets. In fact, some utilities are telling builders, we won't hook up that new house or building. We won't put the transformer out there on the pole outside because we're saving the ones we have in case there's yet another hurricane or fire that knocks out what we have.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of moving parts. So we've got some prices coming back down. We've got some that are still going up. We've got supply chain issues in some areas. Other things have gotten stronger. Again, certain markets are strengthening, and then the residential market, of course, is hitting the brakes right now. So a lot of movement. I think your point about the labor shortage and maybe some more skilled labor might become more available as residential slows down on the commercial side. So that's a great point and something I haven't really heard anybody else talking about much lately. What other things are you seeing, or what's the general vibe going on in your office and among those coffee talks and those things that you're having around the table?
Well, the contractors that I've been running into, like the ones you talked to, are saying that things are really strong right now. Some of them have record backlogs, or they've been booking record revenue for 2022. But they all talk about labor availability. And I think this is going to be the longest lasting problem for construction. Yes, some workers may be moving from a single family or even multifamily construction into other parts, but the needs that I mentioned for manufacturing, for power, for infrastructure, you're not going to find the workers on a single family job site able to execute most of that work. And this is in some ways a decades old problem, but it certainly has been worsened by the pandemic in a number of respects. First of all, a lot of people left the job market. Unfortunately, we had about 1 million excess deaths, and some of those were working age people. We also have people with long COVID, so-called, where they have recurring or continuing symptoms that keep them from working at the same level as they had before, or they have to take care of somebody who either has it or is immunocompromised and therefore can't go off to work, can't go to school, has to have someone at home. So the labor force is definitely smaller than it would have been if COVID hadn't hit. But construction also relies very heavily, much more than other industries, on foreign-born workers, and immigration has slowed tremendously, partly as a result of COVID, partly as a result of policy from past administration. And so putting it all together, I think we have to expect much slower growth of the workforce, continuing excess of retirements over younger people coming into the workforce, and this will be especially hard on construction.
Yeah. So Ken, one other thing, and this dovetails right into what you're talking about. One thing that we see here locally, and we recently this last year had our local AGC training facility completed in the state of Utah, where I'm from, and I think 40+% of the materials and labor were donated by the local construction companies. I mean, just such an inspiring group of folks here, and just so proud to be a part of all of that and supporting it. What other things is the AGC doing in general to help educate the younger generations that are coming out of high school and making them aware of the trades and opportunities available in construction?
Yeah, you're right. It is inspiring to be associated with an industry where so many companies and individuals are generous with their time, rise to the occasion when disaster strikes, or take a longer view and recognize that you can't just complain about not finding enough workers now. You really have to get involved with your local school, your school district, your community college, your workforce development agency to make sure that there are training programs and that they're relevant so that people learn how to use the tools that are out there today, or hopefully the ones that they'll be able to get tomorrow. And in some ways, the pendulum is swinging a little bit back toward construction because for years we complained how the federal government was putting so much more money toward higher education than it was toward skills training. That's still an issue, but meanwhile, parents, guidance counselors, students themselves seem to be getting the message that, hey, you can get a really good paying job right out of high school or right after that first degree. You don't have to go through years and years of college. You don't have to commit to an office job, particularly these days when so-called office workers may be working from home, as I am today. And then construction also has a couple other things going for it. We're no longer an industry that, if ever, that just did dirty, dangerous, dead-end work. Instead, you get to play with cool tools, 3D, 5D, even if you're talking about building information modeling that includes cost and time. And just the simulations I see for that are fantastic, or the digital twins. The equipment is now laser and GPS guided. And so that takes out a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the danger. The industry is a big user of drones. And so it's a different kind of job set and one that I think may appeal much more to the generation that is used to digital activity, to games, simulations, and so forth. So I am hopeful on that score.
Yeah, I agree that technology advancements have really helped make this a lot less of a quote unquote blue collar industry. And we have some very, very smart individuals that are helping to run and manage these projects for us today that we didn't used to have. So back to the discussion on the recession. I mean, where do you feel like we are in relation to that, and where do you feel like things are headed in the next couple of years?
Well, I'm hopeful both about the present situation and going forward. As I mentioned, we're still seeing a lot of job growth. The October job growth came in well over 200,000 jobs, and that's a very strong figure at a time when the working age population is just about stagnant. So we are getting more people to come off the bench, as it were, and take some kind of job. And indeed, construction employment has picked up. It's growing at about the same rate as the overall economy. So while the industry has a tough time in selling construction as a career at a time when we still do need people to be outside in all kinds of weather and starting work earlier than I like to get up in the morning, and other industries now say, oh, you can work from home or just come in whatever day of the week you want. And if you need to go pick up your kid at school, sure, take off. Whereas if you're miles from home or up on the 17th story of a building, that's not so easy to do, let alone if you're leaving your colleagues dangling because you're a crane operator or something. So yeah, construction, I think, will continue to have a hard time. How have they responded? Well, to the extent they can restructure jobs, yes, but also they're starting to raise pay. Historically, the pay for so-called production and non-supervisory workers was 20 to 23% more in construction than in the overall private sector. That shrank to just about 16% as fast food places and local trucking and warehousing dramatically raised their starting pay. Well, in the last several months, construction pay has jumped faster than it has in the rest of the economy. So we're starting to get back to that historical premium, as I call it, that hopefully will draw more people back to construction.
Yeah, so many great points there. One of the other areas, of course, we have educating the youth and trying to get more of them involved younger. And I love your point on the wage increase and the great living that these young folks can make in an industry that provides incredible services that we all need and I think often take for granted. But what about another organization or organizations like it? We like to, again, get involved and have guests on from NAWIC, National Association for Women in Construction. What is the AGC doing to help promote and help women to join our workforce and help on these projects where they can be so valuable and impactful and also help fill this void in shortage of capable management, leadership, and resources.
Well, you're right. And I think there's much greater recognition now than when I joined AGC, not just in our own association, but throughout the industry, that we really need to create an atmosphere that is welcoming and supportive for people who historically were not welcomed or didn't think that they were welcome in construction. So that certainly includes women, and it's not just getting rid of snarky remarks and pictures on the wall of the trailer, but really having equipment and tasks that are more suitable to different strengths and body types and so forth. So we're working with equipment designers, safety equipment and so forth, but also really working to educate people at all levels in firms about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion so that people do feel welcome and not shunned. There's still way too many ugly incidents, whether it's nooses or sexist remarks and behavior. But I think that the industry is at least slowly getting the message. I know the leadership that comes to AGC events is very much committed to this, and our chapters also are really pushing hard on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing it, I'm hearing about it, I'm watching it unfold, and it's definitely improved a great deal. I was a general contractor and started in construction early in my career, going back about 30 years ago, and yeah, I've seen just an immense number of changes in all of those regards. So it's refreshing to see, and I can't think of a time that we've needed it worse than now when we have such shortages.
Well, that's right. And so I'm glad to hear that you're seeing it as someone who's actually been out there in the field yourself. So that's comforting to me.
Well, that's wonderful. So what, as far as the AGC goes, I think most of our listeners are familiar. I don't know that they're all members. They're probably not all members. What are some benefits and things that they can plug into that are available by the AGC that maybe they're missing out on?
Yeah, well, I'm always glad to educate folks about what AGC offers. Everybody who belongs to AGC, it's a trade association, so it's a company membership, not individual membership, but we welcome as many people as a company wants to have involved, and there are many ways of doing that. First of all, companies all join their local chapter, state or local chapter, and the chapters vary in the kinds of things that they offer. But on top of that, AGC of America makes available a wide range of services and events of training, education, and meeting functions. So we have a national convention. It's coming up in conjunction with the huge ConExpo, ConAg trade show in Las Vegas in March of 2023. We also have divisional meetings to get together with fellow building contractors, utility infrastructure contractors, highway and transportation contractors, or federal and heavy. All of those divisions have meetings that not only do you meet your peers, but in the case of the federal one, we have 2 or 3 days in which you get to meet with the people at all of the federal agencies that are doing construction, building. We bring together major owners, institutional as well as commercial owners, with the building contractors, and they thrash out some of their differences and points of agreement. So those kinds of things I think are very helpful for the folks at the top and at the business development level. We have a safety and health conference twice a year, safety, health, and environmental. We have training and education sessions for people who are themselves trainers or doing educational development for the firms. We have things for the tax and accounting, finance people and companies. So on and on. We also have a lot of different newsletters, materials, blogs, and so forth. I personally write a weekly one-page summary of economic news relevant to construction called the Data Digest that is available to anybody who wants to email me at ken.simonson@agc.org, or just go to agc.org to see what we have. And with that, I'll send along my latest PowerPoint, and what we call the Construction Inflation Alert, which is an 8-page document to educate owners, officials, and others about what contractors are experiencing these days in terms of materials costs, supply chain, labor availability issues. And I've gotten very positive feedback from many contractors saying this has really helped bring owners up to speed on what they're experiencing and why those bids may be going up at a time when the owner says, hey, wait a minute, I heard lumber has gone down. And they don't realize that this contractor is buying gypsum that's had a giant price increase, or buying mainly concrete that they can't get on a timely basis.
Yeah, there's, again, everywhere I turn, at least here in our state of Utah, does a really, really good job in our local chapter of the AGC of being present. We had a huge We Build Utah campaign this last year, and it's just been awesome to look and see who's involved and what kinds of projects are happening, and just the vibrancy of our communities because of AGC members. So I strongly encourage each of the listeners to plug in. It's not just for general contractors. There's trades contractors that are heavily involved. We go to the safety event and the local AGC annual event here every year in Utah. One of the other things, us as a vendor, we go and support. We have a exhibition table. We go into the sessions. We mix and mingle. But there's not just us. There's probably 15 or 20 different software solutions and providers of insurance and HR things and all types of areas of business that will help you to be better in running your construction company. So AGC is a great melting pot to bring all these groups together to bless the lives of construction companies everywhere.
Well, thanks for the plug, and I think you've also made a really good point that even if you're not a construction firm yourself, if you're a vendor or a supplier, you get to hear what contractors say they need and what they're benefiting for. You get to see your competitors, but also firms that may complement your business and help you do some business yourself. So I do think that both the chapter events and the national events are well worthwhile. And I'd also encourage anybody who isn't sure how to find their chapter. They can go to agc.org. We have a map right there that you just tap on the area you're interested in, and you can get connected right away.
Yeah, and I don't want to fail to mention one other organization you at the AGC partner with, the CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association, and we're been a decade and a half long sponsors and friends of CFMA, and I love that you're getting involved with that organization as well, because they're really providing a valuable service to construction companies to watch their dollars, to figure out how to be more profitable, to adopt innovation and technology solutions and systems that will help them to, again, lead into this coming decade of innovation that the rest of the world has been enjoying for the past couple of decades. And maybe historically, we haven't quite done as good of a job exposing ourselves and leveraging those tools.
Yeah, and we, for 30 years now, we've sponsored a 2-day conference in Las Vegas every October and November with CFMA. The program is just packed with the 36 sessions typically. Some are repeated so that you can get to 2 different breakouts, and you really get the details on what's the latest on the accounting rules, on tax law, on forecast for the financial outlook, and so forth. So just an example of how professionals within companies or specialized firms that are dealing with a particular segment of construction can benefit.
So one other point that I think is important to make, I go to upwards of 20 plus events a year myself on a regular basis. Our company goes to even more. But when we're sitting around those tables, or we're there at lunch or at the dinner or at breakfast, and we're sitting among multiple contractors and construction companies, general contractors that are sitting around the table, they're having valuable conversations and sharing best practices and tips and tricks and helping each other, helping to raise the level of our performance and our ability to be profitable and be more successful in completing our projects. So there's so much value that can come to people for coming and getting involved, being a part of those conversations. And I'm just so grateful to not only support AGC and be a part of those types of events, but also the great work that you're doing all around the country, to all the tables that I don't get to sit at and hear those conversations that I know are happening.
Well, thanks. And I will say that I think 2023 is going to be a year in which companies find they need that expertise from the outside more than ever. We have, as I talked about at the top of the hour, the large number of federal funded projects that are coming through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We have a lot of power and manufacturing projects coming, but we also have a whole lot of new regulations and guidance, Buy America requirements, apprenticeship, and other labor requirements that are going to be layered on anything that's getting federal funding. And we're also seeing the market churn quite a bit as higher interest rates are certainly squeezing out some projects, putting some back on the shelf. So it's really going to be a time that people are going to need information on a timely basis, learn about new things, learn about how things are changing. And I think this is really one of the strengths of AGC chapters and frankly of AGC of America.
Yeah, that's great. I think our listeners probably know what we both have a fondness. Obviously, you work for the AGC. For me, I'm an outsider looking in that just appreciative for the opportunity to be involved. I think, if there was any closing thoughts or any encouragements that you would give to the listeners, Ken, we would just appreciate what do you want us to take away from this conversation today?
Well, just to recap, I do see a lot of opportunity coming ahead in 2023, particularly if you're involved with the manufacturers, with any kind of alternative energy, whether it's producing wind or solar, the components for it, or the installation of utility scale electricity storage or charging stations. We're going to see tens of thousands of battery charging stations. And then carbon capture is a whole new area that I think will open up opportunities. And then third, as I talked about, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is going to be pouring a lot of money, not just into highway and transit, airport projects, but also into broadband, into water, sewer, conservation, and port activity, rivers and harbors. So just a whole suite of things that will be new. At the same time, companies that have been working on commercial or institutional projects, they have to look very carefully at how much of that activity is going to be put back on the shelf or canceled outright. And then the labor force issue will still be with you. Some companies are also going to be running into new challenges on supply chain and materials costs. While you'll get a break on some things, others may go up a lot. So you have to be very careful on pricing. And by all means, communicate with your owners and your prospects on a timely basis. Give them the facts as to how things stand at the moment and what to expect.
Wow, such a wealth of knowledge, Ken. We've sure been thankful to have you on today. We appreciate you sharing this wisdom and experience, and I'm confident that the listeners all will walk away with some value today. So thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me.
All right, you bet. We'll look forward to talking again down the road.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mobile Workforce Podcast, sponsored by About Time Technologies and WorkMax. If you liked the conversation we had today, or were able to learn anything new or helpful, please make sure to follow us on our WorkMax page on LinkedIn and on Instagram at WorkMax_. And subscribe to the show on iTunes or your preferred podcast platform so you will never miss another insightful episode. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and share the show with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us and will allow us to continue providing impactful information with others looking to improve their results in their business and, in turn, their life.